Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? Let me just make sure a couple of things here. Nobody else is in the room. Okay, we have class of 76. We have class of 2019. Oh, just down the street. Welcome, everybody. Oh, aloha, Colini. I don't know how to say the rest. Danny with his wife now, class of 2010, living in Ontario. Oh, we have class of 2014. Hi, Sophia. 2011, Saxon. Oh, somebody sees Whitney. Megan Taylor. Okay, you all can probably see that as it's coming through. So good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Anna Gutierrez, class of 96. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations here at the college, and we're so excited that all of you are joining us today, along with my colleague Caroline Brabant, class of 2008, who's here, and Sabrina Ramos. We're so happy that we have so many familiar faces and so many regulars and a lot of new ones, but more than anything, we're so grateful to have Professor Chuck Hill joining us this morning to host this very important session that I think we all have a lot to kind of get from his vast expertise and knowledge. So as you see on your slide, Chuck Hill is a professor of psychology here at the college, and he has a PhD in social psychology from Harvard University. And he is the recipient of the Nehru Teaching Excellence Award. So we're so fortunate that he's going to share this presentation that he's spent many years doing, that as you can see has been translated into many languages. So he will, I'm sure, be sharing us more details about that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chuck, while I continue to let some of these folks in that are continue to come in. So just a reminder, we are recording this session and we will be sharing it in our email for our recap for the session. As well as we will be hosting it in our YouTube channel. So I hope that's okay. Also, feel free to use the chat room for posting any questions you may have and any comments or anything. So make sure to use that chat room and we'll continue to monitor it throughout and as Chuck goes through his presentation, okay? Anybody have any questions or anything? Just, I hope you enjoy the session. Thank you. Okay, Chuck.
Okay, well, let me share my screen.
Oh, hold on, let me stop sharing mine. Okay.
Play from the start.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay. Oops. You're on.
There it is. Can you see it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, intimate relationships and coping with COVID-19. What's important in personal relationships? And how are they maintained while you're coping with COVID-19 if you're living together or if you're apart? What's important is revealed in my cross-cultural research on intimate relationships, which are primarily romantic or sexual. But almost all of the same things are important in other types of relationships, such as various family relationships and friendships. And I'll talk about how they're similar or different. My cross-cultural study of intimate relationships has been online in 20 languages at this webpage, and this is what it looks like. My collaborators are people that I have met at international conferences around the world. I would talk about my study and they would say they're interested. They would send me I would send them the questionnaire, they'd send me the translation, and then I'd create the web pages. And so I have more than 40 collaborators actually around the world and almost 9,000 participants. And my collaborators are from Turkey, Colombia, Germany, the US, Mexico, Colombia again, Russia, China, Greece, Russia again, Romania, Lithuania, Pakistan, Japan, Poland, Hungary, Nigeria, USA, Argentina, Italy, Japan, Indonesia, Israel, India, Taiwan, and Brazil. And then, of course, there are people have participated from other countries, altogether more than 70 countries around the world. Here there are actually 8,839 participants from 72 countries in 9 cultural regions. North America, Latin America, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Central, West, and South Asia. Unfortunately, those are lumped together because I had difficulty getting respondents from the Middle East. I had some colleagues who had agreed to translate it, but they were ultimately unable to do that. However, I do have Muslim respondents from Indonesia and Pakistan, so I have all of the major religions covered, even if I don't have as many from the Middle East as I would like. East Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Among the participants, 69% are women, 31% are men. Women are generally more likely to participate in psychological research. In addition, there are 40 who differ from the binary gender categories used to define relationship types in the study. The ages of the participants range from 18 to 84, with the median half above and half below age of 21, reflecting the fact that 75% are students. So most of the recruiting was done at universities. Overall, 72% have a current relationship with the following categories: females with a current partner, females without a current partner, males with a current partner, males without a current partner. And among those with a relationship, there are 8 relationship types defined by men or women in opposite sex or same-sex relationships who are unmarried or married. So I have all these combinations: female opposite sex unmarried or married, female opposite sex married, male opposite sex married, female and male unmarried, and same-sex married and unmarried. Data analysis explored predictors of who had an intimate relationship, and especially relationship satisfaction and relationship commitment. And they revealed that the predictors were consistent across the 8 relationship types and the 9 cultural regions. And they were also similar for the non-binary genders and for students and non-students. So these are generally pretty universal factors that are important. The findings were published last year by Cambridge University Press in a book called Intimate Relationships Across Cultures, a comparative study, which is available in a paperback from Amazon. And this is what the cover of the book looks like. The factors that were important in predicting relationship satisfaction and relationship commitment, there were many of them, but they fell into 4 categories. And so I'll discuss these factors that were important in each of these categories, the things that were most important, and how they're relevant while coping with COVID-19. The first column shows the factors that predicted relationship satisfaction, which in turn predicted relationship commitment. But the second column shows factors that predicted relationship commitment independent of relationship satisfaction. In other words, sometimes people feel committed to a relationship whether they're satisfied with that relationship or not. So people sometimes stay in unsatisfactory relationships for some time. Well, the first factor is partner suitability. And what makes for a suitable partner? Well, the factors were personality similarity and rating the partner desirable as a partner, and interestingly, parents and others approving the partner. And I'll talk about each of these, but I want to note that rating the partner desirable leads to commitment whether you're satisfied with the relationship or not. Well, about personality similarity. Evolutionary psychologists argue that for men, what's most important in seeking a mate is physical attractiveness. And what's most important for women is social status to support her and her children. But in reality, physical attractiveness and social status are rated only moderately important by both men and women. And that's true in the data collected by evolutionary psychologists. What is rated far more important by both men and women is personality in this study and in other research. Think of the people that you care about. Do you care about them because they look like models in the media? No. It's because of the way they treat you. It's their personalities. That's what really matters. Well, about rating the partner desirable, what does that mean? Well, there are many, many things that can go into rating a partner desirable, but it turns out that the most important are intelligence and similar values and attitudes. And as I mentioned, note that people feel committed to a partner they consider desirable, whether or not they're satisfied with that relationship. About parents and others approve of partner. People are more satisfied with a relationship if parents and others approve of their partner. Things can be pretty miserable if they don't approve. Think of how awkward it is. You marry someone, your parents are opposed. You can go visit your parents, but if your spouse is not welcome, that happens sometimes, but it sure makes it difficult for the relationship. So consider what your family members and friends think about potential partners. When someone says, well, I have this feeling about this person, I got this kind of vibe, I have this intuition, it usually is based on subtle nonverbal cues. The tone of voice, the facial expressions, do they pay attention to all these subtle little things that we may not even notice that we're paying attention to. So when people say they have these feelings, we should pay attention to it. And when we have these feelings, we should pay close attention to them, because there really is a basis for them. It's not just some wild idea. And other opinions of others are especially important for online dating. People can say anything about themselves online, so you don't know whether you can trust them. So it's important to meet the first time in a very safe public place. And it's important to introduce the person to others to get to know their vibes about the person. Others will notice things that you may not. So listen to their concerns, although you don't always have to agree with what they think, especially if they have some prejudices that you don't share. Well, whether you're spending time together or apart due to COVID-19, partner suitability is just as important for being able to maintain all of the other factors. It takes extra effort to get to know their personalities and for family members and friends to get to know them if the interaction is limited during COVID-19. But you need to make that effort because it's important. Well, the second group of factors are intimacy dimensions. Emotional closeness, feeling emotional close, saying both are in love, the 4-component love scale. I worked with Zick Rubin, who developed the first love scale, and it had components of caring, attachment, and intimacy. And then other researchers have developed other love scales focusing on passion and commitment. And what I found in this study was that these 4 components go together: caring for the person, being willing to do things for them, feeling attached to the person, feeling dependent on them, intimacy in various means, but here we're talking mainly about self-disclosures, and then passion. So these 4 things are the same across all these different 8 relationship types, these 9 cultural religions. It's very simple. We're kind of all wired the same as humans, wired the same emotionally in our brains. And then trusting the partner not to lie. Trust is fundamental to any relationship. And then the sexual satisfaction scale. And And then not feeling anxious about attachments. People form attachments as kids to their caregivers, and it turns out similar kinds of patterns may matter later. Some people feel secure, comfortable forming relationships. Other people are very anxious about them. Some avoid them altogether. And note that these things, some of these things are important for commitment, even if you're not satisfied with a relationship. So if you're madly in love with some person, or you feel that we're meant for each other, people can feel committed to that relationship and stay in it, even if they're not satisfied with the relationship. I mentioned these things about intimacy dimensions. Now, if you're not spending time together due to COVID-19, it really takes extra effort to maintain intimacy dimensions, being emotionally close, expressing affection verbally or non-verbally in video, because you can't do it by touch. Again, trusting the partner not to lie. You're not around the person. Can you trust what they're doing? But realize that affection can be expressed verbally and non-verbally, even if you cannot touch. A word, a smile, those kinds of things are important. And if you're spending time together due to COVID-19, if there are others in the house, wow, it's a challenge. You need to have some private time together as well as private time alone. And if you have kids, this will probably be after they're in bed. But remember that you can express affection by how you treat each other, how you talk to each other, the things you do for each other, even if you cannot do so by touch when kids are watching. A third category are social exchange processes. And I'll discuss each of these. But note that if you feel invested in the relationship, people feel committed to the relationship, even if the current rewards aren't very good. You spent a lot of time and effort building up this relationship. You may not feel there are many alternatives, so you stick with this relationship, hoping it gets better. Maybe it does if you go to counseling, maybe it doesn't. So, but benefits and feeling invested. If you get a lot of benefits from the relationship, you're more likely to be satisfied. But if the benefits don't outweigh the costs, people will not generally be satisfied with the relationship. Equal involvement. If partners are not equally involved, the less involved person can more easily walk away. So the more involved person may give in to the other person's wishes and demands to keep the person in the relationship. That gives the less involved person a power advantage. And eventually, the less involved person gets tired of being bossed around, or the more powerful person gets tired of being pressured to become more committed, ending the relationship. In my previous research with Zick Rubin on the Boston couple study, we followed couples initially 2 years, and then we followed them for 15 years and 25 years. And I found that equal involvement was one of the best predictors of staying together in eventual marriage. Well, whether you're spending time together or apart due to COVID-19, exchange processes are important. Providing benefits, being equally involved, sharing power, feeling invested. It's especially important to provide social support. Help each other cope with the stresses caused by COVID-19. Provide encouragement, resources, problem solving, advice. But it's much harder to provide benefits and social support when interaction is restricted. So you need to make extra effort to do that. And the fourth category of things is conflict resolution, having positive responses. Let me talk about each of these. All relationships have conflict, but what's important is how you deal with the conflict. Do you respond negative with a negative? Somebody blows up, do you blow up back? Or do you try to understand what's stressing the person? They overreact to a situation. That's a clue that they're being stressed, and being sympathetic. Do you discuss things in a positive manner, or do you pout? Do you walk away? It really makes a difference in terms of satisfaction with a relationship. If you're spending more time together due to COVID-19, it takes extra effort to maintain conflict resolution. Being cooped up, getting cabin fever, tensions build up, you have to have positive responses instead of lashing out. And I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said, company is like fish, begins to smell after 3 days. So when you're cooped up with people, whether it's visiting relatives or whether it's your own family members due to COVID-19, you need to get a break from each other, whether it's going into your private room and your study, a bedroom, closing the door, whether it's going out for a walk alone. We need to have these breaks from each other's. Otherwise, the intensity of constant interaction and little annoyances build up. So you need to have this time of staying together, being apart, staying together, being apart, in order to maintain all of the tensions that build up due to all the anxieties and fears. Well, this study focused on intimate relationships that are primarily romantic or sexual. It turns out that the same factors are generally important in other relationships with other family members and in friendships, even though they may differ in degree or form. There's a wider range of criteria for partner suitability. Oftentimes with friends, we may have one thing in common we enjoy talking about, we enjoy doing things with, and with a different set of friends, we have different things in common. So suitability is still important in that you have to have compatible personalities, you have to have some values and interests in common, although you may not share everything, and whether or not other people approve of your friends, that makes it difficult to combine them in the same situations, but you still can have different sets of friends who aren't necessarily friends with each other. It just makes it more difficult and awkward when you want to have celebrations and invite all of your friends. Intimate dimensions may certainly be less intimate depending upon the nature of the relationship, but caring about each other, showing respect, and trusting the partner not to lie. Those are things that are important in any kind of relationship. And exchange processes, are you getting benefits from the relationship? Is it equal? Do you have equal say in the relationship? Sometimes relationships are hierarchical. One person has higher status than the other, like an employer-employee situation, a parent-child. But still, there's certain things that respect that need to be followed. And in exchanges, in these hierarchical relationships may take the form of gratitude. So if somebody does something for you, you express your gratitude even if you don't reciprocate in the same way. And then, of course, conflict resolution, that applies to all kinds of relationships. And so taking a positive approach, discussing things, trying to find common ground. One of the best ways to do that is try to find some value that you both agree on. You can find some value, some overall goal. Once you agree on the goal, then it's easier to work out agreement on the means of reaching that goal. And stop my share. Now, are there any questions? If you type them on the in the chat.
You can also feel free to unmute yourself and, say your question out loud. We do have some from people who register. We can go through those if nobody has any particular questions at the moment. So everybody's being shy, Chuck. They're thinking, they're processing.
Well, it should sound familiar. It's the kind of thing when when I did the study and I look at it and say, oh, well, these things make sense. Of course, these things make sense. So what the factors are that are important are not surprising at all. But what is surprising is it's the same things that matter, whether we're talking about 8 different relationship types, whether we're talking about 9 cultural regions around the world. It's the same things that are important. And a lot of these same things are important for other kinds of relationships, not just romantic and sexual ones, but friendships, work relationships, all kinds of things. Most of these things are important, although they may take a different form. You're not as intimate, but a lot of these other factors are still important in any kind of relationship. Okay, there's a question. How is it best to deal with one partner needing more private time than the other? You have to, I think the important thing is you need to respect each other's needs. And we sometimes have different needs. And realize that when the other person needs some private time, it's not a rejection of you. But it's recognizing that they have a need and you need to respect that need. And then you have need for being together. And so you need to arrange the times. When is it appropriate to have a private time and when is it appropriate to have a together time? So get to some kind of understanding, like, I need me time, in the morning when I'm getting ready, or I need an hour of me time in the evening when I can just let go of everything. So and again, the key here is communication. Being able to talk to each other, being able to listen to each other, and the fact that you care enough about the other person that you recognize their needs, whether their need is to be together a lot or whether their need is to be alone some of the time, and working out a compromise that in a way that's respectful of each other and shows that you care about each other by respecting each other's needs. How do you keep the conversations fresh and deep? Wow. Well, to keep from going crazy, you need to have some kinds of involvements, maybe some movies you watch, some books you read, some things you look at online, and then try to find something that you're interested in and then try to share it with the other person. So discuss what you found, or sometimes you're discussing the latest thing on the news. And of course, there's a point where we get tired of the news and we want to break from the news. But by trying to find things that you're interested, then those become top potential topics for sharing conversations with other people. Oh, there's a question. Was there anything that results was a counterintuitive or particularly surprising? Well, as I mentioned, just the fact that it was so similar. I mean, you read books on the family cross-cultural, and they talk about the different rituals in this country and the different rituals in that country, and everybody expects it to be different. And so I was looking for differences. And what I was surprised at, hey, what's important is the similarity. And even these factors that are important, they vary a little bit from culture to culture, but the amount they vary is not that much. For example, there are cultures where parents are still arranging marriages. So the parental approval is more important in those cultures, but it turns out it's important in all the cultures. Even when we have what we call free choice, you marry whomever you love, well, your parents are influencing your choices. When you're a kid, they talk about, oh, you ought to marry somebody with the same religion, the same race, the same ethnicity. They're influencing you. and they want to be in the right neighborhood and send you to the right schools. Maybe they'll send you to a private liberal arts college hoping that you'll meet the right kind of person that'll be appropriate for you to marry. And then when you go to you're dating the person, you generally, parents want to meet them. When I was dating my wife in graduate school, I gave her a ride home for Thanksgiving. And along the way, I stopped at my grandmother's house, and my parents had driven 120 miles to my grandmother's house to meet her. Who's this person you're dating? And by their subtle and not so subtle comments, they let you know what they think of the person. Yeah. Um, Question, do I think it'll be higher divorce? I don't know. I've read that there's been an increase in domestic violence, though, because it's been much, as I mentioned, that you're cooped up together, little annoyances build, people are frustrated, they get angry, and sometimes they take out that anger on each other. And it's very easy to raise your voice if some petty annoyance. And so I think it's a very trying time. And I suspect that relationships that are already having some difficulty coping with conflict, it might build up enough for a divorce. But as I said, sometimes people feel committed to a relationship. Sometimes they feel trapped in a relationship. Maybe they've got kids. Uh, maybe they can't make it financially on their own. I mean, in LA, it takes two incomes to pay the rent for most people. Um, so I can see where it may push to divorce for relationships that are already under stress. But I don't think it's going to push to divorce for people that don't have any stress in the relationship already. Yeah. Yeah, comment, it's been hard for married people. Yeah. And especially if you've got kids, how do you be you're a full-time parent, maybe you're being a teacher to the kid, maybe you're working online. uh, when is the when is the time to get your work done without being interrupted? When is the time to have any private time with your spouse or your partner? um, yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Chuck, there was from earlier how to respond when your partner is less concerned with the social distancing than you are.
um, I think you need to talk about the fact that this you're afraid. You're afraid. This thing is, we're at risk. Um, Most people get it and fine. 95% of the people get it, have the symptoms, and they're okay. But some people, especially people who are older, have underlying conditions, but even some of the younger kids will get it. So we're at risk. And because you care about the person and you care about other people that you may come in contact with, that out of respect for me, out of caring for me, please do this. And because when you're around other people, you can pick it up, you can bring it home. So it's not just your own safety, but it's the safety of everybody else you come in contact with, and the safety of everyone that they come in contact with. Uh, that's and I hope that by calling attention to the fact that admitting you're afraid, that's okay. Uh, that you're not just being difficult, you're not just nagging, but there's a genuine concern, and I will feel much safer if you would follow this thing. And I know I've gone out on walks, I've seen young people together, 6 of them walking close together, and that concerns me. I mean, they're less at risk, but they may go home to their parents, to their grandparents. They may pick it up, they may pass it on. So even if they don't get it, they're putting other people at risk. And young people tend to feel invulnerable anyway. So that makes it hard.
I have another question. Did you look at how children either impact the relationship or how the relationship impacts children's development, negative or positive?
I didn't explore that in this study because I was focusing on the adult relationships. One thing I did find that one important thing that that was surprising was agreement on whether or not they wanted children was a very important predictor of whether or not they were satisfied with the relationship. So one person wants kids and the other one doesn't want kids. That's a major source of stress in the relationship. But I didn't ask about kids because 3/4 of the people in the study were college students, and so very few of them would have kids.
What about, I know you touched upon it a little bit, but anxiety during this time?
Yeah. I think, well, doing things to relax is important. Exercise, some of this me time that people need. Although if you're sitting there obsessing, then then you need to get up and do something. But I think exercise is the best thing you can do. I think that one thing that can help is looking towards the future, planning what are you going to do next year? What are you going to do when you're able to travel? For example, I was supposed to go to 3 psychology conferences in Europe this summer. Well, they've all been postponed till next year. I'm not sure I'll be able to do it, but I can look forward to it. I'm working on another book now, something to look forward to. So having something to look forward to, something to spend your time thinking about, so you're not spending your time obsessing about your worries. I think that can be helpful.
Okay. I think there was also another one in the chat from JO. A lot of couples who previously lived separately moved in together to quarantine. What aspects in new domestic partnership predict or result in long-term success, especially given the overexposure due to the quarantine? Great question.
Well, one of the things in the back in the Boston couple study, this is where we followed both members of 231 couples that we recruited from 4 colleges in the Boston area. That's why it's called the Boston Couple Study. We followed them over time. And we found that intimacy, things like love and equal involvement, these things predicted staying together. But there were 2 measures that did not predict whether or not they stayed together. And one was whether or not they had sex, because there were different attitudes about love and sex. Some couples are having sex even though they're not in love. Others are having sex because they are in love. Some couples are not having sex even though they're in love. And so you get all those combinations. It doesn't predict. The other thing that did not predict was whether or not they were living together. Because when you're living together, much more intimate, you get to know each much better, more opportunities to express affection, but also more opportunities to discover problems, to have conflicts, all those kinds of things. So it very much served. When we started the study back in the 70s, we were worried, people were wondering, does cohabitation mean the end of marriage? People are just going to cohabit without being married. No. For most people, cohabitation means it's a step, a step of courtship. It's a trial of marriage. And for some people, it means you discover you're compatible and you get married eventually. Maybe when your kids come along, you just say, hey, we better get married. But for others, it means this is not going to work. And so one of the things I discovered was that people who live together decided to marry sooner, or they decided to break up sooner. So I think that living together for of COVID-19 is going to have a similar kind of effect. people that are compatible will discover they're compatible, they care about each other, they work things out, or people that find that they're difficult to get along with, they have all this conflict, they can't resolve it, they're going to discover that sooner too. So I think it'll speed things up, maybe rather than changing the outcome so much. Yeah.
Okay. There were a couple questions from the registrants as well on online dating, and Whitney also posted here. Did you take a look at whether people who met organically versus online ended up feeling more or less happy or fulfilled, stayed together longer?
In terms of this study, people who, whether they met online or not, didn't make that much difference. It wasn't how they met, it was all these other things. So if you met online and you introduced to people and all these other things fall into play, you're going to be satisfied. It's just that when you're meeting online, you need to make extra effort to make sure that everybody does. And the issue here is trust, because when you meet people organically, you meet them through people you know, they have similar values or similar attitudes or similar interests. That's why you meet them. You meet them through your networks, you meet them through roommates if you're in college, you meet them at the, at church or at a club or some other activity. You know you have something in common. You meet them online, you're based on the profile. Did they answer it honestly? And so it takes extra effort to get to know them, to get to know their personality, get to know their values. Do they really share these things in common? So you need to, so that on the one hand, you get a wider pool of people, which is great. I tell students the best time to meet a potential mate is while you're in school, because that's the widest pool of available people. You get out of school, you're in the workplace, not a good idea to date at work, because when you break up, as many relationships do, then it's awkward, it's difficult, and a lot of people are already married or divorced or kids or whatever. They're not in the same place in life that you are. And so online dating widens the pool. You get to know many, many, potentially more people. But again, you don't have all of the advantages of knowing the person and trusting the person and knowing their values and everything. So you got to make extra effort to find out those things. And since half the time people are introduced by somebody else, that means you already have somebody who approves of the person because they're already friends with this person. And so you need to make sure that other people meet this person you've met online to make sure they approve of it. Not that you require approval, but hey, you've got other vibes out there feeling what this person's like. Is this person a good person? Are they going to treat you well? And are they compatible with all your other friends? Because when you marry somebody, you don't just marry the person. You marry their family and their whole social network. And if that person fits into your network, that is great. And if they don't fit into that network, that's a problem. That's a problem. Yeah.
There's a comment there about from Leanne and Jeff saying that there are other studies that show that people who cohabit before marriage have higher divorce rates. So, any comments on that?
Well, it may be they discover pretty fast that they're not compatible.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we first wrote up the results of the Boston couple study, we called it breakups before marriage. And we said the best divorce is the one you get before you get married. You don't have all the legal entanglements that happen after marriage. Yeah.
There are a couple more questions that were here, but you may have already kind of briefly touched upon them, but it was more specific to sex life when everyone is stuck at home and are not able to go on date nights away from the kids or adult time?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing my daughter did. Um, she has a kid who's almost 4, and then there's another family they met through the university daycare that has a daughter the same age. And what they decided to do was that they would exchange babysitting. And that way it's limited. It's just these two families, and both very, very cautious, careful about social distancing, all these kinds of things. Uh, but that way they could have, by doing an exchange, um, that way the girls could play together, and that way they could get some work done at home. They could have a quiet evening at home, or they could go out if they're able to eat dinner outside somewhere. So by limiting the contact, um, you're taking some risk, but they felt they needed to do it in order to cope with to get some work done, as well as to have some time together.
And then this last one, it's again kind of similar to what we've been talking about with
Yeah,
quarantine. I like the way they put it: stay at
yeah.
home quarantiffs. So how do you maintain the intimacy when even the sound of your own breathing? So it's, not just your partner, but also you. But I like the quarantiffs.
Oh, that's a challenge. And again, for one thing, you can show affection through behaviors, tone of voice, the way you treat each other. It isn't just through touch. And so by the way you treat each other, the way you act each other, you can show affection to each other. Um, and uh, and then trying to be more intimate, that becomes a challenge. Yeah, yeah. But I think the important thing is communicate, tell each other what your concerns are, what your hesitations are. That communication that's going to make it work. Yeah.
Well, I don't see any more questions here in the chat. Does anybody have any final thoughts, comments, or any shout outs? You can unmute yourself again. Feel free to do that. While people are maybe thinking, I just want to thank you again, Chuck, for joining us. I think we are all walking away with some valuable tips and kind of things to kind of manage this. And we really appreciate you sharing all that, your study. Let me see some calls coming in. And also, meanwhile, then I want to share with everybody our upcoming dates that we will be having for our next session. So let me pull that up here. Let's see if you see any questions coming through. No, I know there were some familiar faces here, some of your fellow pens as well on the call, but they're being too shy, I think, to chat. So let's see here. Oh, yep, somebody has time for one more question. If you want to go ahead and take a look, let's see. Any advice for dating during these COVID times, typically during early stages of dating when things are not as explicitly exclusive? You avoid discussing other pursuits, but considering a date now includes assessing the potential exposure. How do you assess how risky a potential date is with being intrusive?
Well, I think at that stage, early dating, where you're not quite as intimate, that maybe where you, as things are opening up a little bit, I noticed that some restaurants are putting tables outside. So you walk to the window, you pick up your dinner, you walk to the tables are separated. And I think that doing that kind of thing as things open up, as long as you're practicing social distancing. Now, being close to the person, that's where you have to judge your risk. Do you want to hug this person, you want to kiss this person, that's something you have to think carefully about in terms of your risk and their risk and your own family situation. For example, if you're living at home and you've got parents that are older or grandparents, then it's much riskier than if you're, say, with just living by yourself or with a roommate. So again, this is something you need to talk about, but you could still go out to places, maintaining some distance, wearing a mask, but it's hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I saw anything else on the chat there.
Oh, she just real
go
quick,
ahead.
she followed it up with, she's thinking more around how to ask the other person what else they've been up to without being super intrusive or asking for a play-by-play.
Yeah, I know. I think